January 24th, 2023. My sister and I was always close growing up. We always had each other's back until she turned 15. Everything changed. She would always lock herself up her room and only come out for the bathroom and food, and sometimes not even that. One time it was dinner and my mum called me and asked, "Can you ask your sister if she's hungry, please?" I went upstairs to her room and knocked on her door. No response. Knocked again. No response. Since we were never allowed to lock our room doors in the house, I opened the door and she was just standing there. Not saying anything, just standing there staring at me as I opened the door further. I walked closer to her. "Mum asked if you were hungry." "And are you okay?" I asked. "Leave," she replied with a deep enough tone to scare away a dog. "What?" I struggled to get my words out because she showed no emotion. It was like she just lost her senses. "Leave!" she screamed. And I did just that. I ran downstairs as my mum asked, "Well, is she hungry?" Almost telling my mum what happened. I told her. She said she ate already. After that day, everything about her was off. I tried to ignore it because I thought, that's just what teenagers do. Right? Wrong. 2:56 in the morning, I randomly wake up to scratching noises, like an animal digging. I get out of bed to find where it was coming from. My sister's room. Instead of knocking, I bursted in her room, and I was lost for words. I see my sister carving "She Must Die" on her bedroom wall right above a family picture, with everybody's faces scribbled over, but mine's having a red circled around my face only. As she spots me, shaking in terror and struggling to grasp words, she runs to the door and slams it shut. Next morning, I pretend nothing had happened that night. I go downstairs and, surprisingly, sees my sister sitting at the island smiling. It was unusual because, like I said, she never comes out her room nor downstairs. Besides being weird, I asked her, "Where's Mom?" No response, as she continues to stare and smile at me. I didn't think anything of it. It almost made me forget about the night before until she fixes her mouth and asks, "Is your face okay?" I was confused as I ran to the mirror to see "Die." "I will kill you." Drawn on my face, I panicked and scream at her, "Why?" Each step that I take, the more her smile fades away. "You should watch it," she says with a grin, and stands up to look at me face to face, and leans closer to my ear and says, "You wouldn't want me to use a knife next, right?" And just runs back up to her room and slams her door. As if that didn't shake me enough, I hear more scratching, and I had to put a stop to all of this. I run upstairs, bust into her room to see once again another carving, but this time it says 2:56 n.m. February 2nd, 2023, drawn over my face in red marker with a red substance dripping from the picture. I still don't know what the date meant, but to this day, I never went into my sister's room nor said a word to her ever again. It's February 1st, 2023. The old saying is, before you embark on a journey of revenge, dig 2 graves, but in the end, I only needed 1. I have no regrets for my years spent planning and executing my vengeance upon Crichton Tillingshaft Jr. It should never have come to this, and I like to think that if he had just paid for his crimes, I would have tried to move on. But that man did not take responsibility. There was no denying that my 13-year-old son was dragged beneath Crichton Tillingshaft Jr.'s car for 180 yards. There was no denying that Crichton Tillingshaft Jr. had fled the scene of the accident, leaving my boy to die by the side of the road like an animal. The authorities thought he was driving under the influence, but by the time they caught up to him, there was no way to prove it. The trial was a sham. The Tillingshaft fortune saw to it that his team of doctors and psychiatrists spoke of dissociative episodes and addictions. His lawyers questioned my parenting, scolding me for allowing my boy to be out delivering papers at 5 in the morning. In the end, all my son's killer received was a hefty fine, community service, and 12 years probation. Was that all my boy was worth to them? It is a painful thing to outlive your offspring. My wife had died in childbirth, and the thought that my son would not attend my grave as I attended his mother's left me not entirely sane. I bought a gun and tried to decide if I wanted him dead or if I wanted to die myself. Eventually, my perspective changed. I became colder. I let my love for my son twist into a dream of vengeance. I vowed to never rest until I saw my boy's killer on his knees. Years were spent watching and planning. I came to know his life better than I had known my own. Finally, shortly after his 40th birthday, I began to move against Crichton Tillingshaft Jr. At first, all I did was let him know he was being watched by using the skills I'd spent years honing. His family heard footsteps echo through the house at night. They would investigate to find a door or window open. They started finding newspapers delivered to their front step, though they never subscribed, and their mansion was behind walls and a gate. Those papers were not new. They were from the year my son died. He began to panic. He hired security guards that never found anything amiss and bought guard dogs that disappeared to be found dead weeks later. Once the Tillingshafts were good and rattled, I backed off. I waited a year. I could afford to. Then they found Crichton Tillingshaft, Senior, dead. Everyone said it was a simple heart attack, but I was responsible. The old man wasn't even a week in the ground when I struck again. 17-year-old Crichton Tillingshaft III took a tumble down one of the crowded stairways of his college. His injuries left him a paraplegic. Months later, an opportunistic infection took care of the rest. That blow made my son's killer turn his back on the sobriety he had embraced 25 years ago. That drove his wife away, leaving him alone in that big mansion with just his servants, but I soon took care of them. For all their professed loyalty to the Tillingshaft family, a few well-planned accidents and some threats from the shadows were all it took to send them running. After that, I waited again, knowing that eventually, despite his near-constant drunken stupor, my son's killer would realize what I had done. It was a cold February morning when he came to me. He screamed and cursed until he collapsed into a sobbing heap. Does hell await me as punishment for what I've done? I don't know, and I don't care. It was worth it to have the once great Crichton Tillingshaft Jr. fall to his knees on my long untended grave. I rented a summer cottage from rural area in the middle of nowhere. I had planned to spend my whole summer there, fishing and exploring the nearby woods. As I arrived to the cottage, it was evident that nobody had been there for a while. A window had been shattered and spider webs had formed in every corner you could find. I cleaned the cottage to the best of my ability and patched broken window with a piece of cardboard. It had taken me at least 5 hours to get it into a somewhat habitable. My first night there was not very pleasant due to scratching sounds coming from under the floor. I hoped the noise was caused by mice rather than rats, because I hate rats. Next morning, I pulled the floor open to scatter some rat poison and patched it back how it was. As I was making my way outside to the nearby lake to see in which condition the boats were, a sudden rain bursted out of nowhere. I ignored the rain and continued inspecting the boats, but soon it was pouring down heavily and I had to run back inside. I made some coffee while waiting the rain to stop, but it was not showing any signs of stopping. It turned into a thunderstorm, and soon it was pitch black. The only time I saw something was the occasional thunderstrike illuminating the surrounding area for a second before turning back into pitch darkness. I gave up on the idea of fishing for that day and went straight to sleep. I woke up to the scratching sound from floor, and the storm was still going outside. I turned over to face the window to see outside, and a sudden lightning illuminated the area. And for a mere second, I could have sworn I saw something standing outside my window. I jolted up from the bed and grabbed my flashlight to see what it was, but there was nothing. The noisy scratching had also stopped. Unpleasant feeling covered me as I was all alone there, and it was eerily silent. Even the sound of rain was gone. I flashed my light once again outside, and in the corner of my eye I saw something massive leap away from light into the darkness. I experienced the loudest gulp in my life as I was certain there was something outside the cabin. I slowly walked back to the bed and closed my eyes, trying to catch some sleep. I felt a cold breeze, and it felt like a water droplet landed on my forehead. I opened my eyes to the pitch darkness, and the moment lightning struck, illuminating my cabin, a massive humanoid creature was crouched in my cabin, while its massive head was hovering over my head. I freezed from fear, how something so massive had snuck into my cabin without making a sound. I grabbed the flashlight next to me and turned it on, but the creature was gone. I was questioning my own sanity, but as I stared to the floor, I saw a pool of water, like something big and wet had just stood there. Something snapped inside me, survival instinct perhaps, because I have little recollection what happened after that. The only thing I remember is waking up inside my car without my clothes on at a gas station.